Internationality, it's everywhere. Of course, we can find it in foreign books, music, school courses, and conferences like this one. But if you look closer, you will notice it in small gestures, personal behaviors, and lifestyles of the people around you. And most importantly, in yourselves. An example is in International Baccalaureate student profile. Quite unsurprisingly, one of the main features of the IB student is open-mindedness, and that is, to an extent, being different. It is people like you, like me, thrown inside an environment that is somehow and somewhat different from your original one, that make up internationality. And it is really this concept of diversity that is present both in the very core and surface of the international environment. When people converge in new, different places, they don't only bring their own persona with them, but also their culture. One's culture depends in the first place from the national cultural features of your country, but also on what your experiences are. Quickly think for yourself what the word culture means to you. According to a very famous Italian dictionary, culture is this. And my translation is the expressions of the material, social, and spiritual life of a population or ethnic group. But to me, culture is much, much more. Culture is the appreciation of a nation's, of someone else's nation's values, traditions, and attitudes, which become part of what persons are and pervade from the way they speak, behave, and communicate with others. When some elements of a national culture are so strong that they pop up immediately in almost all the individuals of a country. However, we need to be careful not to confuse this with stereotypes. For example, Italian culture is a fashion, and it's everywhere, from the shoes, to the clothes, to the kitchen. Many people like Italian food because it's healthy and very tasty. They like to go to Italian restaurants and often envy Italians because we eat such delicacies every day. Maybe they think that we're all chefs. Wrong. I'm the living example for this. Just ask a couple of friends that I had over for dinner last week. My pasta was so bad, they ended up ordering sushi. Here's another example. If you talk to an Englishman about sports, he will start blabbering, amongst the others, about cricket. How much of a strategic and tactical game it is, how fun it is for the players for the fans to watch how the players are carefully positioned on the field, and how engaging it is for them to watch them play for several hours or even days. I don't have a clue about cricket, and my cultural imprinting and DNA, come on, everyone knows it. When it comes to sports, in Italy only one discipline matters, and it's football, period. Many factors can influence one's culture. One may think that people with a more urban culture are more sophisticated, more educated, or even that their culture is somehow superior to a more rural cultural identity. But does this mean that wealth influences culture and its quality? Can culture be measured qualitatively or quantitatively? I would now like you to think how much you've been exposed to culture in general. Was it more than one culture? Which one were you exposed to the most, your own or others? Did this happen in a young age or in an adult age? And would age, in this case, change the amount of culture you possess? Something interesting happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I'm Italian, and my whole family lives in China with me. My mom has a group of Mexican friends, which are very religious, and they only speak Spanish. And since she has learned Spanish when she was young, she can understand them pretty well. So these women meet up each week in each other's houses to pray the rosary. A couple of weeks ago, it was my mom's turn to host a group, and I was there around the house by chance, when I heard the priest speaking about the Council of Trento and the reforms that the church had introduced. Me and my mom exchanged looks. We both knew exactly what he was talking about. It was surprising and delightful to hear him speaking about something we had learned in school when we were young. As you know, the headquarters of the Catholic Church are in Rome, in the Vatican. And therefore the history of the Catholic Church is Italian history, our history. Yet, the history of the Catholic Church is international, and therefore part of an international environment. It was incredible how I could connect with a priest, someone who was not Italian, yet we shared a culture. What I thought my mom's friends would have only perceived as additional information, the historical detail, they in fact appreciate it, as it was part of their culture too. I believe that this really shows a glimpse of the power of internationality. And I also believe that internationality is a culture by itself. Made up by many different faces and people, internationality is a bit like a medal with dozens of sides. I will apply my theory to one of my good friends. He was born in Finland from Greek parents, lived there for a few months, and then moved to Greece for a couple of years. Afterwards, he moved to Germany for 3 years, and then to Spain for 4 years. Now he has lived in China for 4 years. Shanghai is where I met him. He can speak German, Greek, Spanish, and English fluently, and is currently studying Mandarin. When he lived in Germany, he participated in and learned about all of the festivals, such as Oktoberfest, went to German school, had German friends, and ate German food. In Spain, he learned how to cook paella and churros, and how to love the landscapes of the country. Back in China, I don't see him as a Greek only. The cultures of the countries he lived in transpires from his behaviors and ways of thinking. But to me, I'm still very much bound to by my Italian origins, as I've lived in Italy for 13 years before moving to China. But when I ask him where he thinks he's from, he says he's Greek, but comes from the world. So, when do you become international? Is it from the moment you move country, or is it a longer process? Cultural enrichment, cultural identity, is an enrichment to oneself. In my opinion, the fundamental shift that marks a person to become international is the moment when they go back to their original country after living for a long period of time somewhere else. When I moved to China, I felt this change on my skin. Whilst you live in an international environment, your mind goes through invisible changes which allow you to become more open-minded and make you more aware of how narrow your original culture is once you go back to it. But don't misunderstand me here. I'm not in any way saying that Italian culture isn't rich. Rather, but communication is an effort that obliges you to play the game. And if you've lived for a long period of time in a foreign country, such as China for myself, when I go back to Italy, I may not accept some of the stereotypes I might have found myself agreeing with before. Now, imagine yourself in a nice restaurant in Italy. You're having dinner with your family and discussing how the day went, when you hear someone charging with a slurping sound and spitting their saliva right beside you. How rude you will think. And so will all the other diners and the owners of the restaurant. The guy will be promptly kicked out without too many compliments. The numeric majority of the people who found his actions disgusting and repelling overwhelmed the single different individuals. You're belonging to a culture without being international, therefore creates edges. If the same scene happened in China, however, you will most likely still find his action disgusting and offending, but would most likely accept it. In an international environment, everyone is a bit different from each other, so your mind is generally more open to differences from people, from different individuals. How open, however, varies. By wanting to be similar to the Chinese, by buying Chinese necklaces in cheap house, going to tea ceremony, eating baozi, studying Mandarin, am I taking in some of their culture? Or am I just buying souvenirs and enlarging my knowledge about China? But most importantly, when does a different culture start to become part of my own? Thank you.